Yeah.
So
Okay. So
cool.
start
Thank you
us.
for coordinating all those professors and whatnot on the same call.
Yeah, no, they're very happy to. They were like, "Oh, another presentation? Yeah, let's jump on it." We have our little presentation down, so no, they're all like so. They're a great group to work with for sure. They're all so passionate about it.
Wonderful.
So,
If we were in person, I would have asked like 400 questions.
Yeah.
I would have just kept going. I would have. I felt like I was holding them. I'm like, this is too. I'm like, I can't ask too many questions.
He had his yeah, he had his finger hovering on the unmute.
Like,
yeah, no, it's funny the meetings we have. Like we have a meeting once a week with the group, which we don't have anymore. And literally they'll go 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and it's just like it's so much like talking and figuring things out. Like it really is like we have 100 questions, and how are we going to get through them all? So it really is like that.
Cool. Wait, Brandon, do you mind me asking where you are? It looks so wonderful and
Yeah,
Does, doesn't it?
I fled Connecticut for like 5 days and I came to visit family in Florida. So I'm at my uncle's house and he built like this whole new outdoor thing, and I'm just like taking my meeting out here because it's nice and
that's
breezy.
wonderful.
Just a
Cool.
flex on us, you know.
I thought that was just a virtual background for a hot minute.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
So, there's like a pineapple over there growing. So
Oh,
Oh
sick.
my goodness.
An afternoon
Just
snack.
doesn't the energy
I
just
just feel
doesn't
like
feel like
pineapple.
Connecticut, you can tell.
It's nice and breezy. Um,
Um,
do you want me to pull up your infographic, Natalie?
yeah, so I just want to do a quick introduction around first and then infographic time. So uh Christopher, we all actually know each other, but we'll still go around and introduce. And I'm so excited for you're here um at Chris. I'm excited for the rest of you to be here too, of course.
Sorry, I'm kind of a mess.
No, we all are. I'm wearing the shirt, but it's all fake.
I'm Chris. I'm an engineering student, and I'm very interested in getting involved in like research and renewable energy on campus. And I reached out to Sarah McDonald,
Sophie McDonald. She's my
Sophie
girlfriend.
McDonald. So sorry. And she sent me the link to this, so that's how I got.
Great. And what year are you?
Oh, I'm a sophomore.
Okay, great. I love the younger ones. More time on campus.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
So,
right, I'll pull up the infographic.
wait, can we introduce everyone else first?
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
no, I'm a
I know.
spaz.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, I'm Natalie. So Brandon and I obviously are the student members of the working group. We're like the remaining student members. I was involved in the 2019 like protests that led to the working group and everything else. So was Mara, who's in the corner there, and Mara's texting me. And that's who I am. I'm a senior, so I'm leaving, but I'll be on campus in Hartford for a master's program next year. And then also I wanted to, so Ray is another, I'm assuming that's how her name is pronounced. Honestly, I haven't talked to her in person yet, but Ray was the other student on this call. I don't know what grade she's in, but she's actually starting a renewable energy club on campus, which is going to be a chapter of a larger national organization she's a part of. So I'm really excited for that. She had to go, but I'm going to talk to her later, and hopefully we can all get her connected with all of us. Um, yeah. Brandon, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Brandon. I'm a rising senior. I'm a civil engineering undergraduate, and I have a minor in urban community studies, and I'm focusing on urban sustainability. And so the way I got on this group was I saw the protests, and then the president sent out an email, and so I was part of the original seven that were for the first report, but a lot of them graduated. But yes, that's who I am. And I'm really interested in sustainability and specifically renewable energy. And I also help the Eversource Energy Center now in kind of doing research for how UConn can actually implement solar panels at the university. So that's me. That's Brandon.
All right. Caitlin, Chase, you want to give a quick intro?
hello. Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm a junior she, her pronouns, environmental science, and then with a social minor. Might be picking up a bio double major, but we'll see late in the game. But yeah, so I'm in ECOSKI with Chase. Currently, I'm secretary, going for president. So we'll see. I'm voting. I'm up against abstain. So it's looking okay. It's a tough race. But yeah, so I just got looped into these conversations pretty recently through ECOSKI. But I'm more on the policy side, but I love learning about how to implement these things through conversation and also just kind of bridging action with all the energy plans that you guys are making as engineers and whatnot. So yeah.
And I'm Chase, currently a sophomore, he, him, his. Double major, environmental science, political science, double minor, environmental ethics and history. But I am more on the policy side of things. I'm also Nico Husky, running for vice president, but very much on the policy side of a lot of things. I worked on the environmental committee for the past few months with the co-chair and now the bonding committee. So I get like a lot of state policy on energy. And then I'm working for Deep this summer on their energy bureau. So I am like immersed in like state level energy, and I find that UConn is usually it has a lot of possibilities, and this working group has done magical things. So I kind of, or as much as they could with what's going on. So I kind of am very intrigued about how UConn's doing, and just has a lot of information that is relevant.
Natalie and Brandon, thank you for being the only students on that working group. That's insane. I like how they were like, thank you for representing all the passionate students. Like that was the easiest thing. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the the working group feels our pain. They're like these poor two students. It just we've been asking the president's office since May, like since April of last year, like, hey, like people are graduating, like please don't leave me and Brandon alone. And they just never got back to us. So it is what it is.
I dropped the bomb on that one, like, because President Katz was like, yeah, the group's over, and then I didn't hear that, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna add more students. He's like, how do you want me to do that? And I was like, oh, sorry.
That's really funny.
Got traded by the president, but yeah.
All right, infographic time.
Okay.
I
That's
did
really
make
cool.
these last night.
Mara.
Yeah, we don't know Mara.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Mara's running on little sleep, so I thought I'd let her be. But Mara, you have to introduce yourself.
I can go quick. I pretty much know most of you, but hi everyone. My name is Mara. I'm a senior. She, her, hers, environmental science and urban and community. I love hearing the urban community studies minor. Brandon, urban community studies major. And I also was part of Eco Husky, but I'm about to be booted out. Maybe usurped by Chase for VP. But yeah, anyways, I'm super proud of you guys have heard everything. I'm again actually running on low sleep, but I'm super proud of what you guys have done, and I literally will be back if you guys need any help with pushing the institution next year. Let us know. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry. I hope you get sleep. We didn't realize that you were running on low sleep.
Oh no, I was ready to introduce myself anyways. So sorry.
I just chopped Mara.
Now you just chopped me. All good.
All right. Thank you, Brandon, for doing the slides. I love everyone being like, Brandon, next slide.
I got it down to a skill. Like I can do slides now.
Yeah. Very
okay.
talented.
So Natalie, I'll let you start since you made these amazing infographics.
Sure. I had a great time with them. So we're gonna go through power at UConn, allies at UConn, and then just some conversations about the actions that have been taken in the past, themes, that sort of thing. So pretty informal. Just want to make sure you guys have access to this information. And I know a lot of you know this to an extent, but Brandon and I want to share, and Mara too, jump in for the fall 2019 stuff. The different actors that are at play. So starting with power at UConn, these are all of the groups that are part of the university that can be pressured. So some of them are, more towards the ally side of things, but since they're part of the university, we put them in this section. So Brandon, you want to start with anyone? Pick your favorite. Just kidding.
Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Okay, awesome. Yeah, of course. So this is actually interesting. I'll start with the yellow ones. So, or not yellow ones, orange ones. Oh my god.
Oh.
So Provost, the CFO, and the chief architect. So one like subset of a group that wields a lot of power here at UConn, especially is the CFO, Scott Jordan. He was the original chair for our committee, but then he transferred over to the associate vice president of planning, which is Laura Cruikshank. And although he's not like out there, you don't really know him, he wields so much power because he is the guy who is in charge of our money for the university. So anything with renewable technology and I'll tie in President Cat here, but President Cat refers to him as a main consultant to talk if it's feasible, if we can afford it. And so he's one of the people that we can push on the side of this type of investment in the university allows us to create a university that can profit from renewable energy and then also sell that information to companies that we have. So that's CFO. Did I saw a message somewhere?
Sorry, yeah, I should just unmute. But I was just saying, yeah, how is the CFO related to the functions of the Board of Trustees? Because it seems like they're kind of approving the funding, but is he the one implementing the funding? Is that kind of the idea?
He's like an advisor capacity, but I'll let Natalie. I think Natalie had something to say about that.
Yeah, I honestly haven't looked into it enough, but he's sort of like on the he's more of an advisor. Board of Trustees approves everything and has those larger conversations. So honestly, one of the main takeaways from this whole chart is that the Board of Trustees has most of the power. They really have the ultimate power. So on the left side, there's a lot of sort of executive branch stuff with the president and the CFO and his advisors. But ultimately, they can only push. They push so much, and then the Board of Trustees decide. So Scott Jordan has he has a closer relationship with the Board of Trustees. He might be even on some committees for it. I'm not totally sure. So he's definitely closer to them. But no, in the end, the Board of Trustees makes the decision.
Yeah, he's an influential role within that position.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a stab to facilities operations. So facilities operations is the group that really maintains our carbon infrastructure here at UConn, and they're in charge of the cogen plant. And so I wouldn't call them opponents because I look at it as we all have different perspectives, and they've actually helped a lot with UConn 2000 to make our carbon infrastructure like as sustainable as it can be, even though it's releasing CO2 emissions. But they're kind of one of the ones that have been hesitant on those new technologies that Andy touched upon earlier, because in some way they are related to that infrastructure and their jobs and everything that they do is part of that. So I wouldn't say facility operations is anyone of an opponent, but they do have a stance which isn't as progressive as most of the students and faculty would like to. But that being said, they were kind of in an ad hoc advisory committee to our working group, and we included them in the conversations. And so although we did not always agree on things and we bickered on stuff, they were part of that. But I will say that facilities and operations is fundamental as well to the power at UConn, because they're the ones that control the steam lines. They're the ones that know what's going on. They know about energy efficiency. So there's something I just wanted to mention. And so there's someone that I feel personally as a student should be ones that should be lobbied specifically, as well as the Board of Trustees, because they hold the power, but facilities and operations is the one that actually implement that plan once it's passed by the architect and the Board of Trustees. So they're also one that the power organization at UConn, like the architect and the Board of Trustees, refer to a lot, because they're the ones who do everything. So they ask them, is it feasible? Can we do this? And sometimes they're not always certain of certain things. So I'll pass it off to Natalie to pick someone else.
Sure. So what do we want to talk about? Okay, so yeah, we'll go. I'm going to talk about actually consultants now. So we had a consultant for a consulting agency that worked with us for this working group, and they're sort of the group that consults on energy a lot on campus. And they're called BVH. You can look them up online. They're somewhere out there. they fall under facilities operations. So they're on facilities operations payroll, which means that, you know, they tend to defer to the goals of facilities operations, which do differ a bit than, you know, the general goals of, you know, the students and faculty. So again, between BVH and facilities operations, um, they they really get to decide a lot, and that was very clear in the working group conversations we had, because, you know, we had goals and then we went to them and we said, okay, you have all the information and the data and the analysis, let us know what's feasible. So they really are the ones making that decision, and, you know, not always with the same values and goals as, you know, the students and faculty were looking for. So something definitely that could be interesting in the future is having consulting groups that specialize in renewable energy. BVH does renewable energy for sure, and they got that down, but there are other groups out there that are more specialized, and then also have that consulting agency be under a different payroll, so not directly facilities operations. So that's something to think about. And then the foundation. So the foundation is the money people. They deal with UConn's endowment. They're going to be bothering us all after we graduate for money, etc. They come in for divestment. So that was a section of the student demands that were put out in fall 2019. It hasn't really been addressed because the president's like, okay, I can do all this stuff, but in the end, the foundation is a separate entity and they need to deal with divestment. So if, you know, you're working on that divestment angle, all of that protesting has to be directed towards the foundation. All right, want to cover anything, Brandon?
I just want to add one thing to the foundation too, that I forgot who told me, but so I know they just switched their investment. They also are in charge, as Natalie said, of our money, but also they have a large presence in our investment portfolio for UConn in the markets, and they recently switched over to BlackRock because they were like a sustainable, more sustainable in their pursuits of investments, but we don't know that much about it. And again, like Natalie said, it's kind of like it's up to the foundation. So the foundation's like some weird like entity that has a lot of money, and it's like not that shady, but like, anyways, outside of that, President Cat, I think is one of the most one of the individuals that has really pushed this forward and really wants to see this work and has been receptive to the information that we're presenting and taking it in to see how that can apply to the university. And as the professor said, he's been speaking very well and making everyone he knows who is at a power making decision level about this report, which has led to these groups that are going to talk over the summer. And then he has some advisors. We were under him. The working group was a reporting committee to the president. So that's who we reported our report to. And then he follows this logistical policy process of distributing the information. And then I'll give off Natalie to take IOE and OS since she works at OS.
Sure. So, and then another comment about the president. He just got here, which is so funny for him, but he was literally in his first semester when all the protests happened in fall 2019. But so his advisors are older. They've been around a lot longer, and they're the ones, you know, giving him a lot of information. As he's here longer, he'll, you know, be able to make more and more of his own decisions and all of that, and like have that background knowledge. But right now he gets a lot of it, and he gets a lot of advice from those advisors, and they're not always as open to, you know, all sorts of different things, and we don't know as much about them. So that's definitely something to think about in terms of who's influencing the president. But at this point, the president's pretty on board. He's like very excited. He's incorporating sustainability into his like strategic plan or whatever. So and now at this point, it's just a matter of, you know, him and us trying to convince the board of trustees, and he has a lot of other priorities, so, you know, he's not going to push that hard if the board of trustees comes back and is like, oh, we don't have the money for this, or like, oh, we're not into it. So yeah. And then okay, so IOE OS, the Institute of the Environment, is a group on campus that is aiming to be sort of the center of environmental stuff on campus. It's not that centralized, it's pretty decentralized. The IOE has some different groups under it, it's very research focused. And then the OS, the Office of Sustainability, is under the IOE. So historically, the OS has been connected to facilities operations a little more, and they have a lot of information on what's going on. So they're good for like if students want like inside information on, what plans are happening, like what the chief architect is up to, what facilities operations is up to. But there's a lot of changes happening in the OS right now. So that is and now they're separated from facilities operations, so it's less of that hub of information. And I think at this point, the student activism has made enough connections with these other groups that we have a lot of options for figuring out what's going on. Yes, Caitlin.
So I had a quick question regarding like the consultant, like an external consultant. Is BVH kind of the process was just to do that kind of report, and now they're done with their consulting? So how important is it to get another consultant that does have experience in renewables?
Right.
And then kind of the caveat question related to the IOE is like, whose payroll would they be on? Would it make a difference for them to be on IOE payroll? Is the IOE funded by the foundation? That's because they're in the provost, but I know the OS kind of had some like a funds that were so are they related to the funding, I guess is the question.
So the IOE is in the education side of things with the provost. I don't really know how, like, the foundation does stuff with its money. I don't know too much about that, but the IOE doesn't have like a direct link to the foundation or anything. The foundation really is pretty isolated from the rest of this. The BVH is a standby consulting group. So they're sort of the consulting group that the facilities operations goes to whenever they need them. So, they've helped with past campus planning. They're just sort of there for whatever is necessary. We've gone back and forth, and Brandon, jump in with your opinion on this. We've gone back and forth on whether a new consulting agency would be good and whether a different payroll would be good. So I do think there's a benefit to either BVH or a different consulting agency being under. I don't know what they'd be under, honestly. It doesn't matter as much as long as it's, not as long as it's a little higher up on the chain. So, under the president, or I don't know if it can be under the board of trustees, honestly. But it can't be under the IOE, because the IOE doesn't really have that function. Like, they're not, implementing things on campus. They're doing more on the research education side of things. Because then it would just be, if it was not under facilities operations, it would be a little more like widespread with its goals. It'd be sort of more in a liaison position, I guess. But again, I don't know how big of a difference that makes, but I do think it's something to explore. And then in terms of a different consulting agency, if we're going forward with this plan of totally transforming this campus, I do think there's a benefit to finding a consulting agency that specializes in this very large scale, multi energy technology, renewable energy focused transformation. And there are agencies out there, and we've talked to some. So I do think there's a benefit to that, because this is such a big transformation, and because BVH is sort of, more on that typical, okay, we're moving along, we're not super into the huge changes side of things, but they do have that expertise to an extent. So
yeah, I'll add that BVH really is is an instituted consultant and a very trusted service for the university. So that's how we pulled them in, because the architects know them. They work with them a lot, as Natalie said. I personally was of the opinion way back when that we switch consultants from BVH and find a group that was very much involved in this, because BVH is really your normal, very good engineering firm for structures, but they haven't really had a lot of experience with renewables outside of like making buildings a little thermally insulated, but they've never done projects like solar or geothermal. They have the expertise, but they don't have these large projects. So in the future, it would be great that if we do start this process, we bring in individuals who are very much in this niche and who know how to transform this. But that's all I have for that, just to add on. Should I move to the next slide, Natalie?
Can I actually add something real quick? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I don't know if this is helpful information, but I just know that what's it called, with figuring out funding, definitely the foundation I think only focuses on like educational purposes and scholarships, so I don't think that you'll be able to get any funding from the foundation. I don't know if that just to clarify, but also I think that, like, I don't know if this is like a point, I don't know, a helpful point or anything, but like I think it'd be helpful for the university anyways to get like multiple contractors. Even like you do that for like procurement, like I feel like getting, you know, what are they called, like when you get like when you get like a bid process. Yeah, exactly, like you get a bid process through working with other companies and making partnerships on campus. So I don't understand why they wouldn't do that with a consulting agency as well, just to see the different options. So just by the way.
Yeah, that's actually the reason we went with BVH for this working group. Not us, but someone decided that for us. Because they were like, the bid process is a whole 6-month, 1-year process, and we want to make sure we get this started. And we were like, okay, you know what, that makes sense. But I think for longer term, you make a good point, Mara, with that bid process.
A quick like follow-up question on that. So for the power purchase agreement, so the BVH was consultants that worked with the university for architecture and like infrastructure. So that makes sense. They were on the fac ops side. But for the power purchase agreement, that's closely with developers, right? So we're different than consulting agencies. So is BVH like, do they do development as well as consulting, or is that different? I'm just not super aware, but
yeah. So there are consultants, and that's what BVH is. They just provide information most of the time in planning, and then we have a pretty robust facilities operations, chief architect, strategic planning group that will plan it out further using that information, and will then implement it themselves and get contractors to come in and do some of the work. Purchase power agreements are a particular thing that came about actually because private companies have more like tax breaks and little tricks and stuff that they can take advantage of through renewable energy that public spaces not always can. So that's actually where it came about. Actually California like kind of banned purchase power agreements because they were like, you're taking advantage of renewable energy policy incentives. And now it's just formed into something else and they call it a slightly different name. But yeah, so purchase power agreements, one, it's a little bit easier on the money side with those things, and then two, it really is it's easier if you're a university that hasn't done power before. So they sort of there's different types of them, but some of them are really like, okay, we'll be with you every step of this process. We'll plan it out with you. We will construct it for you, and we will maintain it for you. And what you have to do is work with us and decide on that plan, and then you have to pay us for our services in a monthly sort of way, annually way. So it just makes things a lot easier, but it's a very particular sort of structure where you're almost contracting out your energy in a way, in terms of money and stuff like that. And it has its advantages in terms, especially with, you don't have to pay those capital upfront costs, and you also have that expertise on hand. Those are sort of the main two advantages of it. Brandon, am I missing anything with that?
No, I think you explained it really well. It really is just a partnership. It's an easy way for the unit, because the reason it came up too, as Natalie mentioned, the billions scared a lot of people, especially with the whole pandemic, and then worries about if the university would be able to keep a profitable margin in the near future. And so it's an option that's on the table that allows the university to advance some clean energy project without putting upfront heavy capital costs, but still be able to have something demonstratable and something that they can buy clean energy from. It is a bidding process, but it's definitely on the table, more for a near-term project.
Thank you so much. So just one final clarifying question on that. So kind of the options is that was on the table for the university and starting that transition process if it's approved by the Board of Trustees. So it's just like one option. Another option might be like, and that was made sense because COVID and the high costs, but we do have a facility operations and development and university development and construction, and they could carry out this process if the university has funds and from external, like the federal grants and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And one of the big things Natalie and I have stressed is really conversation, because we realized through this group, there's a lot of things happening at the university and people are just kind of overlapping in things, and they just don't know that there's other institutes already having this plan. So it really is kind of talking with what we want to do. And I'll just add that that is one of the options they're considering. Nothing's been made official. It seems something they'll lean towards because they don't put up those costs. But the other thing is using Eversource's renewable energy grid that they want to buy clean energy from. And one fun fact I'll throw in that Alex, I thought he'd mention it, but he didn't. If we were to buy renewable energy from the grid, right, like I think it's like 8 kilowatts now. So changing it from like 8 cents per kilowatt. So if it went from 8 cents per kilowatt to 7 cents per kilowatt, that's $100 million change in costs for the university. So a 1 penny change is $100 million. So it's really also working with Eversource Energy to figure out how we can buy from the grid.
Got you. That's really helpful to know. Thank you. So that's kind of 3 options. Okay. And a quick follow-up question. I'm not sure if you guys want to move forward the presentation, but let me know if this is a conversation you'd like to save. But Chase here and us, we were thinking in terms of centralizing student awareness of this kind of climate action on campus. He was thinking of making a coalition that met like by semester kind of. And so we were thinking about creating kind of a forum where students can get this information directly. And so my second kind of follow-up question, or that's a comment, but the question is, what is the best way to target student action? Is it the Board of Trustees like right now in this process? What are you guys thinking?
Sure. So and one thing I want to point out, in the end, above all of this is the state. Yes, we're very focused on the student activism, but the state really needs to be a big partner in this, and they're not going to be super into it unless UConn takes the initiative to push. It's like the students have to push UConn, and then UConn has to push the state, and it's like a whole thing. So and hopefully that liaison position would help with that. But and that is ultimately where our funding comes from, right? Like it comes from the state, and the Board of Trustees sort of makes those decisions about it. And then the foundation's its own separate thing, that's sort of UConn making its own money and putting it where it wants. And so in response to that, I will say, right now, the Board of Trustees is the target because it's gone through the president. The president's already kind of on board. And the same with facilities operations. They really were a big part in helping us create this report, and now the Board of Trustees has to approve it. So under the Board of Trustees there's the full Board of Trustees, so that's like the official body that makes the final decisions on things. And then there's the Buildings, Grounds, and Environment Committee, so that's a committee, and then just like regular legislation, they report to the board about what they're doing. We presented to them the other day. And then there's the TAFs committee. So the TAFs committee is the something faculty students committee. And that is like, I don't know, somehow they fit into the board, but the president made a special subcommittee of the TAFs committee to tackle specifically the student demands. And they haven't done too much yet, I don't think. But now that the working group has created their report, the report is going to that TAFs committee as well as the Buildings, Grounds, and Environment Committee. And those two committees together, or maybe just TAFs, I'm not really sure, are going to take our report, look at it, and then maybe change it a little bit to make it into their own report, and then send that to the full board for approval. So we're in the stage where we are saying like, okay, we've made this report. The president and us are kind of pushing together to get it approved. And that's really where it can go downhill. And that's really where student activism needs to be focused, which looks a lot like, really most of it is public commentary, and then whatever other creative ideas you can have, including protests, just as long as the board knows about them, because they're not on campus as much. They're really all over the place. Yeah.
That
Any
sounds
questions on that? And then we can move on to the Allies at UConn section.
Yeah, regarding the public comment, so I guess for UConn and any other environmental student groups on campus, because I'm sure we'll be passing along this information as you will as well. What is your and Brandon's advice for if we did plan an action or comment as well? What is the best way to make that impact hit in, like what's the best way to appeal to the board who might see those numbers and just get really held up? And would that meeting, would that be with the general board of trust, or you said the full board, or would it be with the task committee? So, you know what I mean? Is it already the filtered out version or the edited version of your recommendations hitting them and that we'll be commenting on? Yeah, I guess those are my questions.
Yeah, so right now, it's still in the TAFs and BGE section. So they're doing work on it, but at the same time, pressuring the full board is a good plan. So each of those groups have meetings somewhat regularly. I don't know their schedule, but that's something you can find out. And they're all open to the public. So any of those meetings can have public comments. So honestly, at this point, just, having a couple students show it's not even about what students say, really. It's really not about what students say. It's just about like bodies. So having students show up and say a little thing about how it's important to them. Honestly, okay, ideal world, every meeting of these three groups has a couple students in the beginning saying, "Hey, I'm here. Just a reminder, I care about this." I think TAFs is TAFs subcommittee to an extent is on our side and they're interested. So I think ultimately the full board makes the decision, and they're the ones who are going to be least sympathetic. So I think focusing on that is honestly down the road at least is the best move. Brandon, any other thoughts?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. Just to follow up on that like coalition thing, I think it's a really good idea. I kind of told Natalie at one point that I wanted to host something like obviously it's an initial thought, but I wanted to host since we're going back. Yes, the June meeting. It is the June meeting, Mara. I wanted to host since we're all coming back to campus in the fall, and since students will be finally in person, I wanted to host something at the Beanery, something with like climate coalition where we invite students and we have kind of like a forum in person and we invite all the student actors to campus, and then also pull like Angie would definitely go to speak. Angie loves to speak about climate, and also invite the president and like Marilda and the architect to like hear the students and actually dialogue about this. And I was like trying to figure out if that would be something to do, and I think that'd be something to fit with the coalition. But we can talk about that like later on. I can email you guys about my ideas for that.
Yeah, Brandon, I'll reach out to you about that because I'm kind of very that's a avenue that I want to sort of go down as well. I think it would be very beneficial. Over the summer though, the Beanery's closed, so that's kind of difficult. But
yeah, I was thinking fall, like we get
fall.
back in fall and like a huge launch event. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Awesome. So I'll I'll shoot you an email through Natalie and we can start talking about that. I'd love to make it happen. So anyway, let's do it. But I think we should move on to the allies at UConn because there's 2 more slides after this. So I'll honestly, Natalie, this is like the allies is like, okay, I'll start. So faculty, I think faculty and undergrads are our biggest allies, especially the faculty at UConn. They want it, they know the research, they want to get involved. And the undergraduates, like we live on this planet, we're going to be stuck here and it's our livelihood. So those are really our core allies. And so that's kind of where uniting everyone to discuss and move this forward is very powerful. And another powerful thing is the faculty that's on the governing senate, not the student body senate, but the governing senate, which is below the board, but it is a powerful force that basically identifies the faculty's opinions and the students' opinion in a way that they can present it to the board and even lobby for that. So I think I forget who's on this is Kathleen or one of the professors is on the senate, I think. But Angie, right?
Kathy might be too.
Yeah.
Kathy and Angie.
Yeah, like they're all on different boards. There's like a lot of boards at UConn, but the Senate is something that we were trying to push. I forget if they said anything about Natalie, but we wanted at some point that whatever's being done on the environment from boards and committee be released to the Senate, both student and the actual one, to keep on track and at least update us how it's going. So those are, I think, our strong allies. And then I'll give the right side to Natalie.
I'll get the right side. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so and the faculty senate, whatever their official name is, actually were helpful during fall 2019. They like reached out and were like, we want to support you, and they were involved in a few actions, which was really cool. Yeah, and then so other groups that you may not think of first and foremost, because again, undergrads have all the power at this university, and then faculty are helpful because they're here long term. But grad students are also really cool. They're very organized. They're here for a longer period of time, so it's like they know a little more maybe than undergrads, or they're able to work on it longer. And they're also like more mature, which is always helpful. And they have a graduate student association that does a ton of activism. So it's essentially like a union, and they know a lot about public commentary at the Board of Trustees. So they're a great resource, and they were very on board with helping us during fall 2019 as well. They were a little involved. So that's definitely a good resource. And then outside org, so Sam was here today. She was helpful again during that year, fall 2019 and then 2020, with everything. There's a lot of outside groups. So the Sierra Club at some point this year noticed that there was a permit put out for a boiler, which we knew about in the working group. But it was a replacement boiler. But they reached out and they were like, hey, because Sam and I know each other. She was like, hey, like, what's going on with this? Like, is this an action we should take? Like, what should we do? And we were able to meet and really take advantage of that. So they were able to put in, they requested public hearing with DEEP for that boiler, because DEEP had to give a permit for it. And it was another opportunity at that state level. So they're really able to connect us with the state, which is, again, a really important actor. And that's definitely something to take advantage of, as well as, release articles and information to larger crowds. So definitely something to take advantage of. And they're all like professionals, like they're professional activists. So always good to learn from.
Super quick, because I know you guys gotta get through this, but do you know what, I'm guessing the permitting went through. I don't know what happened with that. So in terms of transparency and communication, like how do we find out? Because like we went to or a couple of UConn people went to the actual like thing and submitted comment, but we didn't know how to, because they're not like forced to disclose what happens, right, with the permitting. So I'm just curious how do we find out what happens after the fact?
It's probably on a website somewhere. I think that's a question for Sam, honestly. I don't know too much about it. That one we knew was going through regardless of what we said. It was more of an opportunity just to like get some thoughts out there about
for the Board of Trustees meeting, and I know we can say this again until after, but how important is that, like you said, gathering student like bodies there? How important is it that we do that this June? For this June meeting, is that feasible? And also, how do we how do we see what comes from that meeting? You know what I mean?
I would add that it's really unsure, really, because the meetings are kind of closed doors after you make public comment. I think the most effective thing is if you may not have like a bunch of students at one time, but different students over time, constantly letting them know and saying, hey, what's going on? The last meeting we talked, and that pressure, even in that small way, like puts them on the spot to have to publicly respond. And so that's a good way to approach the board, along with all the outside organizations, I would say. And just one thing to add about that deep boiler, at that public comment, like facilities and op were there, like the architect was there, and they were like, yeah, like this is good for UConn. So like, even though we were working on a committee, UConn representatives were there still lobbying to have this boiler put in. So it's just kind of like a fun fact, but it was kind of crazy to like be in a meeting with Stan and see Stan like at the deep thing, being like, "Yep, this is great, we should do it," and it's like, "No, Stan, no." But yeah, that's all I have. Natalie.
That's all that I agree with what Brandon said. I think in the end it's really that consistency more than anything. Which sucks because like it'd be nice to have a break, but whatever. And again, like getting people to rotate out and just like have someone, doing something every once in a while. Everyone doesn't have to be on at the same time. You guys know that. is helpful. So, okay, so we have 7 minutes. I'm trying to use the time properly. I'm gonna quickly mention these 4, just so it's recorded. So these are 4 groups that are, sort of the ones I was thinking of focusing on, at least for this. The groups that really can help with making changes. So, sorry, Brandon.
Sorry, Natalie. I just want to put the right slide on. Is it 3 or
Yeah.
4?
Sorry, can you go to 2 for 2 seconds?
Oh, okay. Yeah, my
I
bad,
know,
my bad.
still on 2, trying to move
Go
along.
ahead.
The topic. Okay, yeah. So this is what was helpful in pulling off that strike, at least, and as well as the ensuing action. So advocacy orgs. So notice that I don't have environment written on here. It doesn't need to be environment. In fact, that limits it if you're thinking about it environmentally. Like that's not the move, really. So advocacy orgs that are into politics, into lobbying, anything like that. They're a great resource. So some in the past are UCO, FFF, etc. OS interns, again, this is changing. It is what it is, but at least for the strike in the fall, the reason that we were able to know what was going on and write those demands that are actually like in line with what was happening at the university is through those interns, which was me. It was me, but because you have that insider knowledge that way. But another way to replicate that is just, talking to faculty and staff right now in the OS, but also in other spaces from that power map, and just really make sure you know what's going on, because that's a really important component, is knowing what's going on. Big orgs, so USG, UConn Perg, those, whatever tier that is, they're not as advocacy focused, obviously Perg is, but they just have a big reach. So they're a great group to get on board with whatever you're doing. The USG was good with like getting us tons of exposure so that people knew about the protests, which was really helpful. And they actually passed amendments as well or whatever, which is somehow helpful. And then student community. So just recognizing like, okay, there are these little groups that do their activism, but really getting the full student body on board is important. So saying, okay, where do students form communities and how do we get those communities on board? So, this can be anything from frats to cultural groups to, climbing groups, anything like that, where there's student organic communities. That's really the way to pull people in. So I just wanted to go over that. But now we have 2 more slides in 4 minutes, and we can go over if we have to, but we'll try to stay on track. So this is just a list of the actions we've taken. They are what they are. Does anyone does anyone have questions on any of them? There's sort of some classic options. Or if, there's one where you're like, I kind of want to try that, what was the challenge with it? Something like that. Okay, cool. We can skip to the 4th slide then. Okay, so these are our themes. Brandon, I'll take the first 4, you take the next 3. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So, number 1, intersectionality and justice. We know why this is important, right? It's key to any activism. Especially with climate change, you should be focused on climate justice, and it really is something that is just deeply tied to every, social system we have and all the inequities that exist. So that is something that needs to be central to the activism happening. UConn environmental spaces especially are very white. That's definitely a particular injustice that we have to grapple with. So that's something that definitely needs some thinking and reflection when you're deciding to take action. And of course, intersectionality honestly is very helpful for this, right? You can pull people in so easily with this topic. Safe spaces. Yes, thank you, Mara. I agree. We're on the same page. Safe spaces. So I think one issue that happened with the fall 2019 protests is there were a lot of internal issues. So externally, we were getting good stuff done, but internally, it was just like a hot mess. Like, it was a lot of personalities clashing and a lot of like just like not spaces that are like welcoming and understanding, like that shared relationship building and culture building was not at the forefront. And it really showed, and it was really hard, and it really took a toll on all the activists' mental health. And that's why it sort of fell apart to an extent at the end. It did. So that's something that I think really needs to be prioritized. I will put a plug for RAR, Revolution Against Rape. We're really good at that. But there's a lot of places on campus you can learn from with that. And even, professors like Phoebe Godfrey. And then 3, strategic. Really think before you act. And you guys are already doing this, right? Just thinking about who's in power, how are we going to hit them? We're going to do things that are intentional and plan it out, especially with like stuff like sit-ins, thinking about like, okay, what students can actually pull this off? How are they, what are the legal ramifications? Like, who is comfortable interacting with police? Who is safe for interacting with police? How do we do that in a way that's very intentional? Strategy is so important. And again, make sure you're reaching out to professors, whoever else that, in the sociology department, whatever that specialize in that sort of thing is very helpful. And then 4, pleasure activism. Adrienne Marie Brown has a great book about this. Make sure you're having fun. Like, obviously it's a really upsetting topic, but like, don't be burning yourself out. Like, activism can be really fun. Like, something that worked really well, and it pulls more people in. Something that worked really well with the protest was, I think it was Kat was like, I'm bringing hula hoops, and that was really great. And we really made sure, like, I honestly, a lot of the women in the org were really like, okay, we are going to make this fun. Yeah, bubbles, like, we're going to create little stations, we're going to have like educational things, like, this is going to be a good fun protest. And I think that's so valuable to all of this. Yeah. Okay, Brandon, off to you.
Awesome. So I'm glad to wrap this up. But so, like I touched earlier, consistent student pressure is very important. Even if it's better to be spread out over time with different students talking, as opposed to just doing it once and then not coming back, and then the board of trustees feeling like it was just a one-time thing. So that's very important, to just let the people who make these decisions for our university to know that we want pressure on this. The next thing is transparency. Natalie touched upon this earlier, having a standing committee, and as the professors call it, to kind of let us know what's going on. Everything with with boards and the university at a high level are usually closed doors, and so there's always that need to ask them what's going on. We want to know, and to make sure that what we're saying, the plans that we put forward, are at least being considered and talked about, and not just tabled and left somewhere. And the last thing is the one that's like close to heart to me that I've learned through this group. It's that there's so much that's going on that people don't know about. And like, one thing I'll say is like the Eversource Energy Center. When I was talking with the director, he's like, "Yeah, we're already studying like solar cells and how to change certain parts of the university and where to put him." And I was like, "I'm on a group doing that." And so like, by looping him in, our group over like I think 2 sessions was able to understand how the grid worked, which helped form the latter part of our report, taking information we learned from him that we would have never have found out if it wasn't for that, like, oh, hey, you're doing something like what we're doing. So I think it's one of the most important things, to bring in different parties, directors, professors, anyone who's working to move this forward. And I think that really wraps up what this is. It's really trying to make sure that we can all have some part and say, and collectively move UConn towards a net zero carbon future. But yeah, that's all I have. So thank you, all of you, for staying, and those who had to leave. I know it's recorded. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and to the professors that came to share some information, their insight, and a special thank you to Natalie, who really pulled this entire event together, and making these amazing infographics. She did a phenomenal job, and so that's all I have.
Great. Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to end the recording now.